Most of the videos that I do are not really planned. They're certainly not scripted. It's all about discovery. When I go out and either do an estimate or I'm working on a job, a lot of times I come across something I think would make a really interesting video for those of you who want to learn more about trees. I can only say that I wish there was something like this that was available when I was younger and I was trying to learn, because I didn't have video and I didn't have the internet. I didn't have all the things that you guys have these days to learn stuff. So this next video is kind of a compilation of a few different odds and ends. And sometimes I actually even title the videos odds and ends or bits and pieces, that kind of stuff. And they're really interesting little things that I come across that it's almost like detective work. I have to figure out what's going on or why something is happening. So I think I'm going to show you 3 different incidents here that I think you're going to like them. So follow along with me, and please leave some comments. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. That helps me out a lot. And hit that little bell up there, and that way they'll alert you when a new video comes along. So let's go check out the trees. So I told the client, you have got a really serious problem here. This tree is splitting and it's ready to fall apart. This is an extreme hazard. This is what I said. This is my first reaction. And then I started looking at it a little bit closer, and I came to realize that maybe I spoke too soon. Maybe I shouldn't have reacted that way right off the bat. And then I realized this isn't a split. This is 2 trees that are growing next to each other, then they're rubbing on each other, which is an entirely different thing. Now, it's not good because there's some decay there and there's some damage there, but it's so much better than a major split crotch. So I got to looking at it all the way around, and sure enough, both of these are separate trees, and you can see where they actually grafted together, and there's a void and it goes all the way through, but the area of weakness is limited just to the side, and it's not a tree that's splitting and ready to fall apart completely. So I had to do some backtracking. I said, well, wait a minute, I don't think it's as bad as I thought. It's not good. You don't ever want to say it's okay, but it's not near as hazardous as I first exclaimed to this client. And it made me think, okay, I've got to be careful not to jump to conclusions. Before I say anything, it's important to really look at the tree and walk all the way around. If you see a split, don't jump to conclusions and say, hey, you've got a problem. Look closely and see exactly what it is. In this case, it was potentially really bad. And very close to it was another tree that did have a union where they were growing together, and there was a split that had an active beehive in there. So she said, how bad is that? And I said, well, it's hard to tell, and I'm not going to probe it. Okay, second incident. This is a very, very large sycamore. It's a Platanus racemosa. It's a local California sycamore, and it had a fairly good sized limb break off. So the client called me and said, I'm afraid of my tree. Our other branch is going to break. Is this tree ready to fall down, or are we going to have more problems? So I asked them what happened, and they said that this branch broke from about 60 or 70 feet high, and it hit their roof with enough of a thud that it knocked the nails out of the sheetrock. It's hard to tell, but it came from way up there. So I'm guessing that it hit brush side first and made the noise. There we go, that's where it broke from. It impacted the house, and then it rolled over and once again hit the brush on the deck, because amazingly there wasn't any damage. This branch that fell was quite heavy. I couldn't possibly move it. I cut it all up, so I estimate in total it was probably about 1,500 pounds. So I did an inspection of the backside of that sycamore. I walked all the way around, and look at the size of that tree. This tree is enormous. There was one hanger way, way up high, and I thought to myself, do I want to climb that to get that one little hanger out? And so I talked him out of it. There's the branch that hit the deck. Now this is really interesting. They wanted to know what happened. So I looked at the tear, and the first thing that I observed is this is a spiral tear. It's not just a snap. It kind of twisted. So I looked at the branch itself, and I came to the conclusion that this branch was twisting for a long time. And all the weight was over on one side because, if you look closely here, there is an old wound, a really old wound from where somebody a long time ago cut this off. It was probably going over the roof. And then as this branch continued to grow, all the weight kept going on one side. And it got heavier and heavier, and every time the wind blew, this branch would rotate and rock and rock and rock. So I believe this crack had been developing for quite some time. So I ended up cutting it all up. Interestingly, I wanted to see how bad this decay pocket was. So the first thing I did was I got in there and I cut the callus tissue off, and I cut it up short, and it did not go into the tree very far at all, which is interesting because sycamore trees or plane trees, they don't seem to decay very far at all. On the same property, they had another tree which was even larger than that plane tree. It was a eucalyptus tree, and it was down by the creek. And this tree was probably 130, 140 feet tall. And by comparison, there's that giant plane tree. This tree was absolutely enormous. It's down over the creek. They always ask me, is this tree safe? And I hesitate. I pause and I say, I can't say it's dangerous. I can't see any reason why I think it's going to fall down. But in the same breath, I don't want to scare them. I don't want to say, oh, if this tree goes down, it's going to flatten your house. So I just kind of keep quiet sometimes.
I recognize this structural defect in this liquid amber. Each of these tops, they're about 6 and 7 inches in diameter. And eventually, they're going to push each other apart. There's no choice. All of this weeping right here shows me that the inside of this crotch is starting to get compromised. And if you look up into the tree, you can see that that's the main portion of the entirety of the tree. So what do? I'm out in a complex, and this is part of a collective of trees. And the importance of this tree is, negligent at best. I mean, it's not a tree that's near a house, so they don't really care too much about it. They want to keep the trees safe in terms of things falling on people or major deadwood, so I'm doing a real light trim on this. So ideally, you should put probably a through rod here, or maybe a cable up high, but that doesn't mean that this is going to get better. As this tree grows and continues to grow, even with the cable up high, even with a through rod, the pressure and the weakness is going to be exerted in here, and eventually that's going to cause a failure. So I'm going to do a temporary fix today. I'm going to bring some 1-inch webbing, which has a breaking strength of about 6,000 pounds, and I'm just going to tie it loosely around these trees. So in the event of a big windstorm or some real whipping, or possibly if this tree does survive and fill out, doesn't look very good right now, at the very least it'll keep it from whipping like this and exacerbating this problem. Okay, so there you have it. Just a quick tie. It's not even cinched up tight because I do want a certain amount of movement up in the tree. What's this going to do? Well, if and when this does split, hopefully it'll just split and then catch on this. How long will this last? Well, this webbing degrades in direct sunlight, and in 4 or 5 years it probably won't be as strong. But in 4 or 5 years, somebody else is going to be up in this tree, somebody else is going to be inspecting this tree, and at that point this weakness may get so bad that they'll end up removing it. So for about $1 worth of webbing, I may have prevented this tree from falling apart and hurting somebody.